Hi, I am Mrs. Jardine, and today we're going to talk about skin and body membranes. So that is chapter 4. I can't. There we go. This chapter is about the integumentary system. The integumentary system is basically the skin, its accessory organs, and the connective tissue that covers the body. Here's the two different membranes in this chapter. You have epithelial membranes, which we talked about in chapter 3. That's cutaneous, mucous, and serous. And then the only connective tissue membrane that we talk about is synovial. So the cutaneous membrane, so if you go like this, boom, that's your cutaneous membrane. That's your skin. It's a dry membrane, which is super beneficial to you, so you don't become dehydrated and all of the, water evaporates out and then you die. It is also exposed to air. No other epithelial membranes are completely exposed to air. So that's your cutaneous membrane. So that is your skin. The mucous membrane obviously is wet because it has the word mucus in it. So mucous membrane. It lines all cavities and tubes that open to the outside. So if you think about it, take like 1 second. Hit pause. Think about it. What systems open to the outside? Very good. You're the systems that leads from your mouth. So that would be your digestive, because you can eat something, eat some peanut butter, and then it goes into your digestive cavity. So it opens to the outside, and there's mucus in there. Remember with chapter 3, the tissues, we talked about goblet cells that secrete mucus in the simple columnar epithelial tissue. So there's mucous membrane. They're wet. So your digestive is one. And your respiratory, you breathe in. If you go like this, your hand feels moist because your lungs are moist, because you need any respiratory tissue needs to be thin and moist for diffusion to occur. And your urinary, that goes out to the outside with urine, so that's moist, sweat. And then your reproductive tract, which we already talked about. They also have goblet cells to produce mucus to help move things along, like the egg to the sperm and stuff. So the mucous membranes are all 4 of those systems. They absorb and secrete. So here, so digestive, there's your respiratory. All right, the serous membranes, those do not open to the outside. No, they do not. So that would be like the lining of your heart here, which is called pericardium, because cardia means heart, pericardium. You could see here, let me move this right here. And then the lining of your lungs, so not the lining of the respiratory tract, but the lining just of your lungs, which is an internal organ. That is called the pleura, visceral pleura and parietal pleura, which we'll talk about when we get into those chapters. But basically, what happens is if this is my lung or my heart or whatever, you have a covering around that. Okay, that's basically what it's talking about. That's a serous membrane. And it occurs in pairs. I don't have a balloon here, but that's the most, if you look in your textbook, there's a picture of a balloon. And so like if the balloon touches here, then you have air in the balloon, but you have fluid in your body, and then you have the outside layer of the balloon. So that would be an example of a serous membrane. That's why it says it occurs in pairs, because there's the inner one that touches the heart really, really, really tight, and there's fluid, and then there's the outer one. So if you were to cut open a fetal pig, which we get to do, what you would see would be the outer layer of the pericardium. So my hand, I'll use this. This would be the outer layer, right? That's what you can see. So then you cut away that, and some fluid would leak out. That'd be the serous fluid. And then the inner layer would be on the bottom. See how there's writing on the bottom here? That's how that would work. And it allows organs to slide across the cavity walls without friction. Because remember when we talked about, your bones can't touch. You need cartilage on the ends of them because you can't have friction, because friction would cause the bones to be destroyed. And if your heart was rubbing on things, and it would cause friction, and then your heart muscles, the cells would be destroyed, the tissues. So you can't have friction in your body. That would be very, very bad. So that's why we always have coverings and protection and connective tissue in between everything. All right, so serous membrane does not open to the outside. Does not. All right, so the only connective tissue membrane I told you are synovial. Synovial membranes are the inner linings of joint cavities. So like this is your knee here. And the cells secrete synovial fluid, and it lubricates the cavities so that where's my mouse? Right here. So again, there's cartilage on the end of these, but there's also lubrication in there so that the bones don't touch and the cartilage doesn't get destroyed. So that is a synovial cavity. It's found in joints. All right, you can watch this later when I'm done talking because it's a good review. He's amazing. All right, so the integumentary system has several functions. Obviously, insulates and cushions the deeper body organs. That's what it does. Your skin helps to insulate. Protects your entire body from any type of damage. So mechanical damage, so like when you cut yourself, your skin helps to protect with that. Chemical damage, if you spill some type of acid on your skin. Thermal damage, like when you get sunburn, the sun can cause damage to your internal organs. So the skin protects that. UV radiation, UV radiation would be the sunburn. The thermal damage, that's like if you burn yourself with a curling iron. Or like steam, you burn yourself with steam or fire, anything that can burn you, a stovetop, whatever. That's thermal damage. UV radiation would be from the sun because it causes cancer. And bacteria, your skin, look at your skin right now. Look at it. See it? You can't see it because bacteria is microscopic, but there's more bacteria cells on and inside your body than there are human cells. Isn't that crazy? But you have bacteria in your skin, and it's not a big deal. Some of it's beneficial, whatever. It's just when you cut yourself, that bacteria is not supposed to be inside you, and that's what causes damages. Your cutaneous membrane has keratin. Keratin is a protein that makes your skin hard, and it prevents water loss from the body surface. Your skin has sensors so that you're like, ooh, this is hot. Ooh, that's painful. Oh, I can feel that that's on me, whatever. And it also, like we talked about with homeostasis, it regulates heat loss. So when you're really cold, you shiver and you get goosebumps and you shiver, and that helps that hold heat in. And when you're really hot, you sweat. And then the sweat on your body evaporates. And when it evaporates, it pulls heat with it and it cools you down. So these are the functions of the integumentary system. All right, epi means on top of, so epidermis is on top of the dermis. It is the thin layer on top of the dermis. Most cells are keratinocytes. Oocyte means cell making, so keratinocytes produce keratin. Keratin is a fibrous protein. It makes the epidermis tough and protective. So you can go like this. Oh, I didn't just rip my skin off. See that? I'm just pulling on it. I didn't rip the skin off. It was a little bit irritating, but I didn't rip my skin off my arm. The farther away from the dermis, the more keratin that they have, because the closer to the dermis, it's not. That would be the farther away from the dermis would be the surface here, like what I'm touching right now. Layers of dying keratinized cells accumulate on the outer layer of the epidermis and are constantly being replaced. The epidermis is made of stratified squamous epithelial tissue. It's many layers of flat cells, and they are keratinized, so they are dry. So here are the different layers that your book has labeled, and you've labeled. So this is the top here. This is like the part that you're touching. And this right here would be the bottom right above the dermis. So these cells up here would be the most keratinized, and these would be the least. Melanin is the dark pigment in the deeper layers of the epidermis that absorb light energy. Skin color is due to melanin. So like I'm pretty pale, so I have very little melanin in my skin. Whereas one of my really good friends, she's really, she has way more melanin in her skin, so she has a darker complexion. As you know, well, maybe you don't know, but if you ever go to a makeup counter and you see the million shades of foundation you can put on your skin to match your skin tone, there's tons of different degrees of color on your skin. And that's determined by how much melanin is there. Melanin protects the deeper cells from the damaging effects of the sun's UV rays, so that's why people who have a darker complexion sometimes might not get sunburnt as easily, but they still can have damaged, so it's still important to wear sunscreen. Just like keratin is made by keratinocytes, melanin is made by melanocytes. I already said that. The more melanin produced, the darker the skin. So if you have a dark concentrated area of melanin, that is usually a mole. And some people with fair skin might have more moles than others. Freckles are a little bit different. They are concentrated areas of melanin, but they're not like moles. All right, epidermis, again, like I said, epi means on top of. This is the epidermis. Dermis means is the thick layer of skin. So the thin layer of outer skin is the epidermis. Like I said, it's stratified squamous epithelial tissue, and it's avascular, so it gets all of its nutrients through diffusion. The dermis is the thick layer. That's where the meat and potatoes are. That is where all of the stuff is the hair follicles, the sebaceous glands, the sweat glands, the nerves, the blood vessels, all of that stuff is in the dermis. It's made of dense connective tissue. Hypodermis is deep, way, way, way on the bottom. And that is made up mainly of adipose tissue. So that's your main insulator there. There's all the fat tissue is found there. It also helps to anchor the skin to the organs. And it's a shock absorber and insulator. So the the dermis is split into two layers, papillary layer and reticular layer. The upper dermal region is the papillary layer. So you can see right here, the papillary layer. See that? I don't know if you can see it. That's where your pain receptors would be found, your touch receptors, which is good because you'd want them kind of on the surface so you could feel things. Your fingerprint, so when you take your fingerprint, if you have to get a job where you take your fingerprint, or if you do it for like the lab that we're going to do, that's on the papillary layer, which you'll need to know. So if you burn your fingerprints off, that means you burned off your papillary layer with all the pain receptors, so it would hurt really bad. Reticular layer is the deep layer that has the blood vessels, the sweat, the oil glands, the hair follicles, the deep pressure receptors. So that's right here. Can you see that? The dermis has a very rich nerve supply. So if you have pain on your skin, it's not because of the epidermis, because it's because of the dermis. You cut too far. Sebaceous are the oil glands. They drain right into your hair follicles, which is why if you don't wash your hair for like a week, your hair is really greasy, because when you wash it, you wash that oil that's naturally produced by your body to moisturize and lubricate, or keep your hair and your skin moist so it doesn't dry out and crack and you get all these, skin rashes and stuff. So you have sebaceous glands, and just like the foundation I was talking about, there's lotions that you can buy for your face, and they can be oily. So if you have oily skin, they made a concoction. So you become a biomedical engineer and you can create this stuff. If you have oily skin, they made a concoction to wash your face for this type of skin. If you have sensitive skin, that means you're more likely to break out, then they made a concoction to use on that. If you have normal or if you have dry, so everybody's skin types differs, and it depends upon how active their sebaceous glands are. So sebaceous glands are oil glands, and they go into your skin to keep them moist. They're found all over your body except the palms and your hands and your feet. Why do you think that it would not be beneficial for you to have sebaceous glands that produce an oily substance on your hands? You'd be like, high five, and then you'd fall over. You'd be like, throw me the ball. You'll be able to catch anything, because have you ever heard the word butterfingers? It's like if you have oil in your hands, you can't catch anything. It's going to slide right off. So that's why it's super beneficial that we don't have it. Can you imagine walking with oily feet? That'd be horrible. So that's good. The ducts, like I said, empty directly into your hair follicle, and it's called sebum. It's sebum, but it's like some people call it similar to oil, but it's technically called sebum. That's the lubricant that sebaceous glands produce. And usually when your hormones change like crazy during adolescence, they can be overactive and cause acne. And some people, when they're pregnant, when their hormones change like crazy, it can cause acne. Acne can also be caused by like your diet and genetics, and if your face is dirty. All right, sweat glands. There's two types of sweat glands. There's apocrine and eccrine. Eccrine are the ones that you think of when you think of sweat glands. That's the one that's on your arm and your face when you get all sweaty when you run. It's found everywhere, basically. The apocrine are found in your axillary. Axillary means armpit, so found in your armpit regions and your genital areas. They produce an odorless, yellowish substance, and then the bacteria goes there and eats it all up, and then the bacteria smells. So if you've ever seen people with like, or seen shirts or something that are all dirty and dingy and they have yellow stains in the armpits, that's because it produces that yellowish stuff. And then if it's a white shirt and it's a yellow stain, that is because that's what's produced by your apocrine glands, is this yellowish substance. So that's really important. It helps cool the body down, like I said, so your whole body sweat, and then from the sweat evaporates into the air and it pulls heat with it. The sweat glands are most numerous on your palms and soles of your feet, which is why if somebody has really smelly feet, like my son, he's like, Mom, my friend said my feet smell. And I'm like, well, I don't know, wash them better. Like, so we had to wash his shoes because his feet smelled. I'm like, oh, bless your heart. And actually, we ended up throwing them away. Well, because he would wear them in the morning out to do chores in the wet grass, and then he would wear socks, and he's like, yeah. So anyways, pretty sure it's normal. A friend of mine told me she used a whole bottle of Febreze on her son's shoes, so it's totally fine. But anyways, so some people have really sweaty feet, and then that sweat causes bacteria and it smells. Some people's hands, anybody ever wanted to hold your hand and you're like, ew, your hand is sweaty and gross. I don't want to hold your hand. No, just me. I was like in 8th grade and it was gross. I was like, I'm not touching your hand. It's all sweaty. I'm good. But so that's obvious if you had sweaty palms and hands when you're nervous or something. So they secrete a watery solution of sodium chloride, and that's what sweat is. So I would have hated to have been the person to count how many sweat glands were on someone's body. I'm sure they just extrapolated data, but that's a lot. 2.5 million. All right. Hair follicles. I was wondering if I should stop talking and make a new one. Hair follicles, they serve a few minor protective, like your eyebrows. Do you know they're protective? So if you sweat, it doesn't drip right in your eye. Your eyelashes are protective. They keep things out. You have hairs in your nose that keep like bacteria and dust particles out. You have hair in your ears that, again, prevents things from getting in. So hair is super beneficial to prevent things from getting in. It traps things. It makes it not so it can't get in. So here is a cross section. So there's your epidermis, there's your dermis, here's your hypodermis. Right here, this is the hair bulb. So if you yank a hair out and it doesn't hurt, you didn't pull the bulb. Because this is, I can cut this, chop, 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 and it doesn't hurt because it's dead, right? But if I yank a piece, then there will be a bulb. You look at it under a microscope, and some people's hair bulbs are tear-shaped or oval, or like one person's square, but you can see it. And then so this is where the hair grows from. And see, since it's attached to nerves, it's going to hurt when you pull it out. And see how this sebaceous gland right here drains right into the hair follicle. And this is called an erector pili muscle. So when you get goosebumps and you get cold, this contracts and it causes your the holes that you're up here. It causes to shut, and then you get goosebumps. So that's kind of cool. Those are nails. This is not the middle finger, just so you know. I made sure to get one without them. I have no idea. So here's the cuticle. There's your nail plates. You can see here, this white part up here would be non-living. So you can clip your nails and it doesn't hurt. Clip your toenails, whatever. But then if you get it here attached to this nail bed, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. Nails are protective coverings on the ends of fingers and toes. They're similar construction to hooves, so you're totally like a horse. It's not a big deal. The thick proximal nail fold is called the cuticle. Some people get rid of their cuticles. I still don't understand why you would want to do that. They seem like they do a good job. Oh, I have fingernail polish on. I had, when I was 18, I was camp counselor, and we went out to a movie or something, and we came back because we had to live in this like log cabin, and it was dark, and like there was like one driveway for a car, and then on both sides it was like woods because it was in the woods, right? And so I was like touching the car, and because I didn't want to walk in poison ivy because I'd already gotten poison ivy that summer. And then Sam put her purse in the trunk and she shut the trunk on my finger. Like it was dark. I didn't realize my finger's there. And I'm like, my finger's in the trunk. And she's like, what? There's a skunk? I'm like, I must have been slurring my words. I don't know. I was 18. I wasn't doing anything inappropriate, I swear. Anyway, so I'm pulling and I'm like, my finger's in the trunk. Open the trunk is what I said. But it was like dark and she was way over by the log cabin. So I was like, because she was in front of me or something. And she's like, what'd she say? What? There's a skunk. And she yelled it again. And finally I said that third time, my finger's in the trunk. Open the trunk. And I didn't even swear. Like, what? And so she had to get her keys out of her purse, which she couldn't find because it was dark. And she's like, oh, let's use a flashlight. Oh, okay, got my keys. And then she finally opened it, and I like felt it because I thought it was gone. Like I thought my finger broke off because I couldn't pull it. It was stuck in there, and I'm like, oh, it's still there. It swelled up. Okay, so it was this. So it was my middle finger. It swelled up that big. Like no kidding. Like it was so big. It was this color blue. It was ginormous. I'm sure a lot of you have gotten your finger stuck in something, so maybe you know similar. So then they wanted me to go to the doctor to get it drained, and I'm like, I don't want to go pay for them to do that. It's fine. So I waited a week, and finally my boss was like, you have to go. It's disgusting because it was a fluorescent blue, or this color blue. It was like this big. So I went to the doctor, right? And she's like, I'm in a town. I've never been there before, and she's like, okay. well, I'm going to drill a hole to release the pressure. And I'm like, okay. So she comes in with her little drill, right? And she drills the hole like this, right? And the blood, there's so much pressure in there. The blood shot out so far that it got all over her skirt because she was wearing this. I remember she was wearing a white skirt with flowers on it. And then she's like, oh my gosh. And she was like all mad at me. Like I did it. Like I can control the distance and the speed at which my blood flows. Yep, I'm amazing. I can do that. And she's like, geez. And I'm like, okay. And then she squeezed it. I think she was mad, so she squeezed it really hard to get all the blood and the grossness and the interstitial fluid out, right? She goes, there, doesn't that feel better? And I was like, no, it hurts worse now because you squeezed the heck out of it. Oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. So then, this is the best part. So, okay, whatever. And then, now it's dead, right? That nail is dead because here it's living. This is where she drilled it right here. Okay. And she drilled it too far because that was when I was 18. So that was a really long time ago. Maybe 20 years, hard to say. It still doesn't heal. Like this was dead all the way up here. I wish I could draw on here. All the way up, it was dead. I would get if I peeled an orange, it would get stuck up here. If I went in the garden, dirt would get, then we get all pussy and pus would be up here. I could shove fingernail, not a fingernail. What do you call those things? Paperclip in there to clean the orange out because this was all like all the white stuff that you clip, right? It was a big, huge oval all the way down. It was so nasty. And now it's almost healed and it's been like 20 years. Almost healed. Like, can you imagine? Anyways, so then like a week later, my nail's fallen off, right? Because it's dead. You ever smelled rotting flesh? That's what my finger smelled like because it was rotting flesh, right? So I like ripped it off. I had a Band-Aid off and I was like, oh my God. So my friend, we were in Burger King. My friend bent over to tie her shoe. So I shoved my finger in her nose and she bent over and she literally started to dry heave in Burger King. I was a really nice 18-year-old and I was laughing really hard. My friends I was with were laughing. She's like, it smelled like rotting my finger. So it literally smelled like dead rotting flesh because that's what it was. And then my fingernail grew back. And like I said, it grew back. So the whole thing fell off. And then when it grew back, there was a big hole here because she drilled so far down. She drilled into the nail bed and she killed all this tissue. So like all this tissue was dead in the middle. And it didn't, because when your nail grows back, it's all looks like this. It's all like pink and it's there. So from here to here, it was all dead. So that's why I would get stuff stuck in there and I couldn't get it out. Yeah, it was horrible. But now stuff doesn't get stuck in there anymore because now it only goes to like right here. It's a really long story. Sorry. Okay, so that's nails. You can watch Hank Green and I'm going to stop talking. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions.